Welcome to the weekly current affairs updation on international relations here at Amrita IAS. This week, the major topic that is there for discussion is the Makkah Pact, focused on West Asia. Makkah Pact, which is also known as MJDA. The Makkah Joint Defense Agreement. It was signed on August 7, 2026, that is last week, by the top leaders of Saudi Arabia, Turkey and Pakistan. So you have three Islamic countries signing this. Now, is the first regional realignment since the geostrategic tsunami of the US-Iran war. While the MJDA text has not been revealed, so that is also something that we have to know. Most of things that we hear right now are more of speculations rather than genuine text. Okay, so we haven't seen the text of the agreement in public. The joint statement issued specifically state that any armed attack against any one of the three states shall be recognized an attack against all of them. So this echoes, or this is very much similar to the Article 5 of the NATO, which is an attack on one of us is an attack against every one of us. That is the main theme of collective security. Okay, so this is something that some people might dub the Muslim NATO because it rhymes very much similar to Article 5 of NATO. It appears to be a part of a jerky Saudi response to the specific security challenges, including so Saudi has recently signed a few agreements with Pakistan in the last few years. One is the Strategic Mutual Defense Agreement, and the second one is a longer term one, which is the Multinational Maritime Defense Alignment. Okay, so this thing, Saudi has added this as a third agreement that it has with Pakistan. It has also added Turkey as its partner. So before we move on to the rationale behind this agreement, let's understand what is the military capabilities of each of the countries involved. Okay, so we can see Turkey, which is obviously the most powerful among these three countries if you are to see it in a conventional point of view. So Turkey has an active personnel of around 4,81,000 military personnel. So this is, again, you have to understand, Turkey is a NATO country. Okay, Turkey is the second largest conventional army in the NATO. That is just after US. You have to understand Turkey is the second biggest country. Then there are, so this is in terms of conventional military strength. Now, if you consider the firepower or the military capabilities, then you will have France and UK, which are all more powerful than Turkey because they have nuclear warheads and their delivery systems are also more advanced. Okay, but other than that, Turkey would be considered very much powerful. So it has around 1,100 military aircrafts, very powerful air force, 2,284 tanks and 192 naval assets, and a modest defense budget of 51.4 billion. So I'm not saying this is very less, but considered to bigger players like US or China, it is quite modest. Okay, then we have Saudi Arabia, which is having 247 active personnel, 917 military aircraft. Again, see, all these are majorly US manufactured aircrafts. These are, Saudi is the largest purchaser of US arms across the world, or largest importer worldwide, and it is also Turkey, which is also a NATO partner. Then tanks, 1,000 tanks and 32 naval assets, and a bigger defense budget of 63.99 billion. So this value comes around India's value also. Okay, so this is, India has around $80 billion defense budget annually. Now comes Pakistan, which has an active person of 6,60,000 personnel, 1,397 military aircrafts, 2,677 tanks and 120 naval assets, and a very small budget considering both the countries. It's around 9.1 billion. But Pakistan, mind it, is a nuclear state. That is something that you have to understand. So we can see the military capacity of each of the countries involved. Let's see what is the rationale of this agreement. Donald Trump has put certain pressures on the Arab countries and the Middle East countries. That is something that they are trying to push back against the US demands. Okay, by making critical US security and technological guarantees contingent on normalizing relationship with Israel, the Trump administration inadvertently drove these major Muslim countries nation to establish an independent and alternative regional security architecture. So these are screenshots that I have taken from different articles that have been there in the Hindu, the Indian Express, and many other reputed news channels. Okay, so you can see that why these countries are coming forward. Okay, so again the rationales give a mixed signal. So if I have to look at it, it doesn't really make much sense. See, Turkey never really need any of these countries, or say for example, let's start from Saudi. Okay, Saudi has more or the most rationale to enter this agreement, because again you can see Pakistan's nuclear umbrella will be extending to Saudi. But again there is a contradiction here, because Pakistan has already assured them this nuclear protection, or an attack against Saudi would be an attack against Pakistan, etc. earlier in their mutual agreement. But Iran attacked Saudi, Pakistan didn't do anything, or Pakistan had this problem with India, Saudi was not really involved. So again we cannot really see how much their assurance is going to be worth. Now Turkey, see, Pakistan does have an enemy, India, in a sense. Saudi does have Iran, which is an external enemy. But Turkey doesn't really have any kind of big enemies right now, and Turkey is under NATO protection. That is, no external power is going to be attacking Turkey. And again, mind it, Turkey would like the Pakistani nuclear umbrella, but Turkey does have the US nuclear missiles stored in their territory itself. So around 60 nuclear missiles have been stationed in Turkey, but operated by the US Air Force. That would be much more reliable for Turkey than the rogue Pakistani nuclear weapons. So again, the signals are mixed, but one thing that we could say is that all these three countries, they wouldn't want to normalize their relationship with Israel for them to have a normal relationship with US. Okay, so that is also one problem that we can, so that might be the primary thing. Okay, Riyadh, Islamabad and Ankara rejected the ultimatum. Saudi Arabia consistently maintained that normalization with Israel is impossible without a clear, credible roadmap to Palestinian statehood, a position hardened by the ongoing regional conflict. Pakistan immediately refused to Trump's demand, stating that it is fundamentally conflicted with its national ideology. Turkey has not formally issued an official rejection statement, but it has effectively spawned President Trump's demand for regional nations to join the Abraham Accords. So we can see the Abraham Accords, Palestine, all this coming to picture. And again there is a mixed signal here, which is that this agreement was signed in Mecca, which is the holiest city of Islam. Okay, so we could see this something as an Islamic counterbalance to the Western NATO, or its own regional balancing. On paper, this is good. Okay, Pakistan has nuclear armed country with powerful military. Saudi Arabia could provide all the oil or deep pockets. That is, Saudi Arabia could provide the fund. Pakistan has the conventional military along with its nuclear weapons, and Turkey has a very strong industrial base. Okay, it is especially very strong in the advanced drone production capabilities. So for example, there was this drone that the Turkish company has been producing. It is known as Bayraktar, which was actually used against India during the Operation Sindoor. Okay, so Pakistan had used it against us, and Turkey has this very explicit anti-India stance, always been supporting Pakistan even in case of Kashmir. Saudi Arabia has been balancing between India and Pakistan. Saudi Arabia has been providing funds for Pakistan. At the same time, Saudi has had a very good relationship with India, especially since Modi came to power and he has dehydrated the West Asian policy. So Modi has been balancing both the Saudis and the Iranians at the same time quite efficiently. Okay, next if you have to see how the countries are seeing it. Okay, see, Pakistan is calling it as a purely defensive pact. So Pakistan is seeing it from a military angle. Pakistan is seeing it as a counterweight against India. Okay, at the same time, Iran is saying that, see, this deal is against Israel or is against US. So Iran would like to project it something that is pushing the Western or other powers from Middle East. Okay. Now, what it is not about? Okay, Makkah Agreement has drawn into attention to explicit recognition that an attack against one is an attack against other. You already seen that, but the non-public nature of the document undermines its deterrence capabilities. See, the entire purpose of these kind of alliances are actually deterrence. Okay, so basically it should be that if the Iranians are wanting to attack Saudi Arabia, the calculation should be complex, right? That is, if they attack Saudi, that means they would be in war with Pakistan, in war with Turkey, and Iran should be afraid that they should not attack Saudi. Their calculation should be made more complex. That is the entire purpose of this agreement. Say, for example, from a Pakistani point of view, if India were to attack Pakistan, just like what happened during the Operation Sindoor, then India wouldn't want to be in a war with Saudi or Turkey. So, this agreement should complicate India's rationale or India's calculations, and India should not attack Pakistan. That is the rationale behind this thing. Now, if you are going to keep this document in secret, or if you are not going to release it, if you are not going to tell the world that these are the promises that we have given each other, then there is no deterrence value to this entire agreement. India would probably assume that Turkey is not going to enter a war in the behest of Pakistan, or Saudi is not going to be in animosity with India in the behest of Pakistan. That is what India is going to be assuming. So, their entire defense abilities of this agreement is going to be in jeopardy. Almost all mutual defense agreements deals with the United States signed during the Cold War were public documents. So, see, we can see this, all these policies beforehand has always been public. That is rendering this deterrence capabilities. And again, there has been instances where the countries have been saying that, and if you attack your friend, you will be in war with us. So, this thing has been repeated across the Cold War versus the NATO versus the Warsaw Pact countries. But the last time such a country ended into war because a friendly nation was attacked was when Hitler attacked Poland in 1939, and UK ended the war. It declared war against Germany. So, that is the last time that this thing happened. So, beyond rhetoric, we have to see if nations are willing to go to war for the sake of some country that it has gone into a agreement with. So, that is also rendering or negating the very purpose of this agreement. Then the very record of Saudi-Pakistan SDMA shows that the first year of Saudi's sole bilateral mutual defense pact being active was also the year it has faced unprecedented drone, missile and rocket barrages in its vital infrastructure. See, Iran had attacked air bases in Saudi, it had attacked oil bases in Saudi, and still Pakistan never really intervened while having this SMDA agreement that was already signed with the Saudis. So, again, this is also a problem. Then next one is, see, these three countries, Turkey, Saudi and Pakistan. These three countries would probably assume that they are trying to get away from the US reliance. That is, they are completely reliant on the security from the US. But again, even if they signed an agreement, most of their equipments, around 90% of the equipments of all these three countries. Now, Pakistan is gradually decreasing it by taking weapons from China, but other than that, 90% of their equipments are probably from US. So, you cannot really exclude the US from any kind of relationship, while you are completely dependent on the US for your weapon system, for the maintenance of the system, for the any kind of advanced changes within this systems. Okay, so these are also why this agreement doesn't sound a very realistic in this sense. Then again, if you see, there are also some cultural historic issues that are there. Saudis consider themselves as the leaders of the Islamic world. Again, Mecca and Medina is there, and again, it is signed in Mecca. Saudis would be assuming that they are the leaders of this agreement. Turkey under Erdogan, they are trying to revive the Ottoman pride. Ottoman pride as the Khalifa or the Caliph of the Islamic world. So, again, Turkey is not going to be happy being second in command to the Saudis. So, that is also, there is an internal contradiction, and the Pakistanis being the only Islamic country in the world with nuclear capabilities, they would also want to have an equal say in the table. So, Pakistanis are also going to have this contradiction of who is going to be the leader of this grouping. And again, there is another issue that is more recent, which is, it was the Turkish government that actually leaked the Saudi Arabian assassination of the media personal Jamal Khashoggi. where there has been warrants against Mohammed bin Salman. So you can see, especially MBS, who is the crown prince of Saudis, he has some personal issues with the Turkeys. So that is also something that is there. So the Turkey versus Saudi Arabia complexity is not recent. It has been there in the history. It is also recent in the sense that since 2018 they have been having some issues. So we have to see how this is going to work. Then again, Israel. There is a problem with Israel. The public reporting trajectory of Turkey's interest in joining the Saudi Pact correlated with the rise of Israeli politician statement characterizing Turkey as Israel's biggest threat after Iran. So, Turkey would probably be seeing Israel as an enemy. But again, here, Turkey is under NATO protection. That is, Turkey has to follow the NATO rules. Turkey has to follow much of the mandate that US is putting on them. And Israel and US are very good friends. So, we have to see how Turkey is going to be fighting Israel, staying in the NATO, staying as a second commandant of the US. So that is also there are a lot of contradictions within this pact. Now let's see India's perspective. See, while Saudi Arabia was traditionally maintained a balanced stance to protect its economic ties with India, Turkey has consistently taken an aggressive pro-Pakistani position on Kashmir at the UN. A tighter trilateral alignment risks dragging Riyadh closer to Ankara's voice stance, potentially shifting the OIC's collective output to more critical posture against Indian policy. This is something that we have to see. The OIC, the Organization of the Islamic Countries, they have been more balanced in their recent statements. They have been trying to balance India and Pakistan. They have not been explicitly pro-Pakistani. But right now, you can see that Turkey has been one country that has been especially anti-India. Now, coming together with the Turkeys and the Pakistanis, probably Saudi would also take, or Saudi would be dragged more onto the their side of the argument. That means that we could see some kind of antagonism within the OIC against India in the coming years. Okay, and Turkey's UAs, the drones and their electronic warfare systems flowing into Pakistan would be a security challenge for India. Their drones, Bayraktar, has been shown to be very much efficient in warfare. That is something that we saw in RSF versus the Sudanese army that we learned last week. So here also the Turkish drones have been used. So they are battle tested. They could be a challenge for India. Next is this could be a test for India's or RIA's dehyphenation policy. Now India has dehyphenated the policy and RIA has also had dehyphenated the policy. Now how is this going to stay for some more time, we have to see. Next is the pact introduces a collective defense clause stating that an armed attack on one is an attack on all. This is something which could potentially be used by Pakistan to constrain India's option in the counter-terrorism operation. So this is something that we have to see. This is kind of a chicken's game, where, for example, Pakistan might continue their attack of 1,000 cuts on India. That is, Pakistan might be trying to sponsor terrorism against India as they did in Pahalgam. Now, if India is to strike back as it did in Operation Sindhu, India's calculations are going to be complex. Okay, it is going to be made difficult due to the presence of the Saudis and the Turkeys. At the same time, we could also expect something positive, that is, the Saudis and the Turkeys, they wouldn't want a war with India. So we could expect that both these countries could pressurize Pakistan to drop their terrorist sponsorship against India. So we could see something in the positive, or we could see something that is going to spiral into a very bad situation. Okay, so we'll have to sit and watch how this is going to pan out. For India, probably we could argue, or probably much of the experts are arguing, that India should wait and watch what is in the text. We should not speculate. We should see what is happening, and in the meanwhile, we should dehyphenate our policies. We should deal with Saudis, who have been a very big friend of India. We should also try to deal with the Turkeys through NATO, the Western allies that India has, and we should wait and watch. Okay. While waiting, we can also see the other guy who is also waiting there, which is China. China has been creating a dependency for Pakistan. That is, it has been sending its 5th generation fighters, etc. to Pakistan. Now, Pakistan is year by year getting more dependent on China. So, how are they going to create a security alliance in which China is not a part of it? Okay, so we could see whether the Saudis or the Turkeys, they are going to be comfortable with the guy very much close to China. So these are all things that we have to speculate. So rather than speculating too much, let's wait and watch what is happening. For India, for now, let's focus on our economic policy, let's focus on our oil diplomacy, let's focus on dehyphenating the policy and enlarging our diplomatic presence in the region. Okay, thank you.
Amrita IAS Academy.